Welcome to day 227 on the trail. We have four readings for today from Galatians 4 verse 21 through 5:12, 2 Kings 13 verses 1 through 25, Isaiah chapter 3 verse 16 through 5:30, and 2 Esdras chapter 4 verses 26 through 52. As we saw in Mark chapter 12, and will see in Matthew 21, the use of the imagery of a vineyard is quite prevalent in the Bible. In Matthew, this imagery is used in a series of powerful parables during Jesus' final week. Now, while we briefly considered this important passage from Isaiah on day 210, I believe it is important to review it here in Isaiah 5, as it is such a prevalent image. From Isaiah chapter 5, beginning in verse 2. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it and cleared it of stones and planted it with choice vines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it and hewed out a wine vat in it. He expected it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes. And now, inhabitants of Jerusalem and people of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I have not done in it? When I expected it to yield grapes, why did it yield wild grapes? And now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, and it shall be devoured. I will break down its walls, and it shall be trampled down. I will make it a waste. It shall not be pruned or hoed, and it shall be overgrown with briars and thorns. I will also command the clouds that they rain no rain upon it. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the people of Judah are his pleasant planting. He expected justice, but saw bloodshed, righteousness, but heard a cry. God's people are not producing the fruit of the kingdom. This theme of producing fruit will become an important theme in the New Testament. For example, in the parable of the sower, the ground is to be prepared and properly cultivated so that it can produce fruit for the kingdom. In Matthew 7, Jesus tells us, a good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus you'll know them by their fruits. Also, in the Gospel of John, Jesus uses the image of a vine and bearing fruit in John 15. Abide in me as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me, you can do nothing. We will spend more time on a more direct connection to this image from Isaiah when we come to Jesus' parable, which references this passage in Matthew chapter 21. In our reading from 2 Esdras chapter 4, I'd like to highlight a theme that we will see in our exploration of Revelation. In chapter 4, beginning in verse 44, I answered and said, if I have found favor in your sight, and if it is possible, and if I am worthy, show me this also, whether more time is to come than has passed, or whether for us the greater part has gone by. For I know what has gone by, but I do not know what is to come. The reason this question is asked is quite obvious. Getting to the halfway point, especially when in the midst of an extremely difficult situation, is crucial. When we are suffering or facing an intensely grueling situation, knowing that we have reached the halfway mark reminds us that the end is coming. The light at the end of the tunnel is in sight. The halfway point is a signpost of hope along the long road of endurance, bearing the message, hang on. The end is coming. Don't give up now. You're almost there. When we arrived at Northside Hospital in Atlanta for the birth of our first child, Abigail, I have to confess that I was pretty intrigued by the technology. For an event that humanity has been experiencing since its inception, We have really made childbirth into a science. Of particular interest to me was a monitor that measured the intensity of my lovely wife's contractions. And, being a helper, I thought that I would use the information that I could read from the strip chart to tell Stacy that she was having a contraction. But first, I had to verify the data. So when that little curve started to go up on the chart, I simply asked, "Is it hurting yet? How badly? Because this thing I'm watching here is shooting straight up." This was not my finest moment. I was abruptly informed that the chart was indeed accurate, and my commentary was not necessary nor welcome. Well, that's the gist of what Stacy said, using only her eyes. So I learned two lessons. First, the machine was indeed pretty accurate. Second, I also realized that when you have that kind of information, how you use it is incredibly important. As the line on the chart rose higher and higher during a contraction, I didn't say a word. I just held the ice chips and watched the blood drain from my fingertips as she squeezed my hand. But when the curve on the strip passed the halfway point and began to trail downward, I said things like, "It's almost over. The worst is over. Hang in there. You're doing great." In both Daniel and Revelation, we see a similar approach using numbers like 3.5, 42, and 1260. From Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. "He shall speak words against the Most High, shall wear out the holy ones of the Most High, and shall attempt to change the sacred seasons and the law. And they shall be given into his power for a time, 2 times, and half a time." 1 plus 2 plus a half is 3.5, which is half of 7. And 7 represents the number of wholeness or completeness. So 3.5 is the halfway point toward wholeness or being complete. Now let's look at 42 months and 1260 days. From Revelation chapter 13, verse 5. "And it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. From Revelation 11, verse 3. "And I will grant my 2 witnesses authority to prophesy for 1,260 days, wearing sackcloth." To understand these periods of time, we begin by assuming the use of a lunar calendar. So each month is 30 days. Therefore, 1,260 days is exactly 42 months, and 42 months is exactly 3.5 years. So each of these 3 numbers, 1,260 days, 42 months, and 3.5 years, represent the same amount of time. And all 3 of these numbers represent a moment that is halfway toward being complete or whole. Sometimes I think we miss this crucial message when we are faced with prolonged suffering or distress. We tend to be more interested in repeatedly asking, "How long?" instead of encouraging each other to hang on. We want to skip the 3.5, 42, or 1,260 mileposts and get right to 7. The trials faced by our ancestors were just as real to them as the challenges which confront us today. And like them, we are not just hoping God will make himself present in the future. We are hoping for God to be present in our world today. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay on the trail.